Hello, this is Jenny 2.0 and welcome to my channel. In this video we're going to be watching a recording of a watercolour that I did of my friend Arsénio's dog Kyara. I used quite a few different mediums during this piece, so I wouldn't consider it a full watercolour, but I'll explain those as I go through the process. Standard paper size, which is different to UK standard paper size, turns out, but it's like 8.5 by 11 inches, I believe. So I started off with doing a blue wash for the background. I did use some masking fluid for this. I didn't include that process in the video because it's, pretty boring to watch considering you can't really see anything. But I did love the effect in the video. I thought it was super cool, like just throwing colour down and then suddenly there's an outline appeared. I used a glasses cloth to rub off the excess masking fluid, as recommended by Catty, who actually gives me a lot of advice during most of my pieces, so shout out to her, and I'll try and link her channel in my description of this one. So the style that I do for these watercolour pieces is basically exaggerated hues. So as you can see by the photo in the top left, Kyara is in the red and yellow kind of spectrum for the most part. So I started off with the lightest colours that I have to use on her, minus the white, which is obviously the paper. And I did the yellow first, and then I'm building up the depth of colour with the orange, and I gradually get darker and darker as I go through. We do have two camera angles in this piece. I'm just experimenting a little bit, so you can kind of see the webcam in the top left there. And I also recorded the main video with my DSLR. So I'm figuring out some stuff, which kind of method I prefer. Currently my DSLR can only record in 720p with the setup that I have. So if I do pursue that, I'm probably going to get like a camera link thing to make it so it can record in its full resolution, which currently it can't. Anyways, back to the piece. So now I'm going through, I'm trying to add on the darkest colours on the face. Again, I want to make sure I can build it up and layer it up so it's the true depth that I want it to be. I also decided to outline where her face white markings are, so it's easier for me to do the colours on the face without bleeding into the white by accident. Here I decided to add some depth to the chest. I was kind of debating how I was going to do the chest the whole time, because you can clearly see a texture and a pattern on the photograph. But there's not a great deal of colours in the chest to pull from to make my rainbow watercolour pop. So I do experiment a little bit with it, and I do like how it turned out in the end. I do my watercolour paintings a little bit different to how I feel professionals do it. I don't consider myself a professional at all. Most people, I feel like, put the colours on one big plate and then like splodge water around and blend it all. I like to keep my colours separate so I can know that this colour is this and not run the risk of it looking mismatched when I go back and forth between different colours of the piece. I decided to use purple as the darkest colour, similar to the watercolour portrait I did of my own dog Sugar. Purple was the darkest colour for that one too. Just because I feel like if you did really hype up the saturation of the photograph, that's almost what the colour would be. And also to give it more depth. I didn't want the entire piece just to be red, so I was mixing it up a little bit. Apologies for my voice breaking out a little bit, I am recovering from a cold. So talking is making my voice crap out. Trying to add some depth and texture into that side of the face was a little bit difficult. Because in the photograph, like, there's no background showing through. So it was a struggle for me initially to try and show the hair through properly without, making it not look natural. Now I'm starting with the nose. This was a lot of fun. This one. It looks a bit strange having a green nose, but if you do zoom in on the photo, her nose is a very, very grey green. Probably more closer to olive green than the green that I ended up doing. But I thought it was super cool. Adding some colour on the eyes here. I always find eyes a lot of fun to do. I like doing... I'm a detail-orientated person, so I really enjoy doing eyes because I feel like that's where your eye gets drawn to. And so having them detailed and looking super cool is really important to me. As the annotation says, I did do most of the eyes with my minifigure painting brushes. I do D&D minifigure painting. And because of the very limited space, my smallest or my thinnest watercolour brushes would not be thin enough to fit in the gaps. So I was like, you know what, I'm just going to use my minifigure brushes. Then I use them for the nose as well, because why not? Because the nose also has some very, very finicky details. I believe the nose originally had about 6 colours in it. You couldn't end up seeing all of them, which is a shame. But I did like how it ended up turning out. Wasn't my best attempt, but ultimately I think it worked out pretty well. Alright, so here I am adding some blue tones to the white fur to add some colour depth in there, hue variation. And this is where I also start experimenting with the chest and adding blue to the chest as well. And it's where the ideas start flying. So I put the blue on the shadowed side because the blue is shadows in this piece. And then I try and simulate the harsh shadows of the fur texture, what I can see in the photograph, and try to not 100% mimic every single fur strand, but mimic it enough that you get the idea of what I am trying to draw from. And then I decide to use the yellow where the highlights are hitting, because the yellow in the piece is the brightest light source. And I feel like it ended up looking really cool with the varying hues and shades in there, rather than just keeping it monotone. Throughout this piece I do use earbuds to blot out any excess water, just because in watercolour if you leave the water sitting there it creates a weird puddle effect, which I didn't really want on the piece. This comes from my lack of experience with the medium, but over time I imagine I'd get better and avoid that problem so much. Different camera angle here. Close up of me working on the face. You get a good shot of the teethers, which you couldn't quite see me from that far shot drawing in very well. Deepening the tone on the eyes here. I kind of regret not going purple because it's almost the same colour. I did blue around the eyes because around the eyes is more of a skin kind of texture, and I was trying to keep the textures the same, which is why I had the blue around the mouth and the eyes. Adding some textured lines here. Drawing in the pupil so she looks less like an alien. And now I'm going through the piece with my colours. At this point, I think I've decided that the base colours are all pretty much set in what I want them to be. And so I go over it with my new Faber-Castell pencil colours and use those to add more texture and more depth and more detail. You can see on the left the piece of paper that I used. Before I put any colour down, I always go through and swatch so I can physically see what the colour looks like on the page. Because the worst thing to do is to assume, oh, this colour's the right colour, put it down and you realise it's really not, and then you've got to have to try and like backpedal and correct the mistake. So I used the pencils as a means to really make Kyara look fluffy. As you can see by the reference image, there is hair and ear floof flying everywhere, which was not going to be really easy to do with the watercolour brushes, especially getting them that thin, which is why I was opting to do pencils instead for this. And it also gives a nice texture too, because the paper that I'm using is Arches. I think it's cold press watercolour paper. And it's slightly textured, as you can see. Adding those eye details in there. We haven't finished with the eyes yet, don't you worry, we'll come back to them again. Now, I was trying to add some texture onto the nose that didn't quite work out. Here I'm showing the two white colour pencils that I'm using. We've got a little code on the end of the pencils. The OC stands for opaque colour, and then the FD, I believe it says, is fine details. So here I am adding the whiskers and finer details, you know, getting close to the end of the piece. Typically I'll do that towards the end. And I'm trying to fix the left side of her chest floof. So the masking fluid didn't quite look right in this area. And I was trying to fix it with the coloured pencils by, you know, adding the fur texture there and making it look less blocky. Didn't quite work out so well. So all I decided to do is go back over it using my new acrylic paints. So here I've got some Holbein Gouache acrylic paints. I'm probably butchering the pronunciation of that because I can't read very well. Come back to the piece after I give it a break for a few days and looking at it, because I tend to, in classic fashion, always find errors and stuff after I've deemed a piece complete. So what I did is I went around the piece with my putty rubber, blotted the areas that I knew I laid down a lot of pencil on there, because Catty advised me that if I put acrylic paint over a lot of pencil, the acrylic won't sit and set quite nicely and it might peel off or crack. So I went around the piece and blotted off the pencil with my putty rubber as best I could, where I knew I wanted to put some acrylic paint, and then I mixed the colours up and decided to attempt to fix the chest hair that was a bit blotchy on this side. So here I am, adding all the wispy lines to that, and I think it looks 1,000 times better. And then I decided to go through and add some finer details as well, where I needed it to be more opaque because the pencils weren't quite opaque enough. And I'm going back in, fixing the eyes again. They didn't quite have as much contrast as I wanted them to, so I darkened up the blue, made the pupils darker, and then went through it again with my acrylic paints, adding more harsher highlights to the highlighted areas. And then here is the finished piece. You get to zoom in on all the details. You can see some wispy hairlines there. Ultimately, I really like how it came out. Every time I do a piece, I feel like I'm learning something new with it. and improving in my skills. Feel free to subscribe and like the video if you're interested in watching more of my content. I intend on uploading, I would like to do at least once a month. That's kind of how often I'm drawing, basically. So if I can get a video out once a month, I consider it a win. But in the meantime, feel free to follow me on Blue Sky, follow me on Kyara.app. If you haven't got an account to Kyara.app, I would highly recommend it. It is basically a Twitter/Blue Sky meets Instagram. It's an art website which is designed by artists for artists, anti-AI, with AI protections in place. So every time you upload a piece, they'll scan it to make sure it's not got AI involvement. And then it also has built-in glaze and nightshade, which if you don't know what they are, I highly recommend giving it a quick Google. The synopsis is they help protect your artwork on the internet against being used for training AI models. So, highly recommend that website if you haven't got one already. Mine is pretty new. I'm currently uploading some backlog of my DeviantArt account works on there, so uploading my favourite ones and building my portfolio back up. Feel free to follow me on there if you're interested, keeping up to date with all my work. Commissions are open, so feel free to hit me up if you want to order something from me. And have a great rest of your day, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye bye! Thank you for watching.